Hi, I'm Lorianne. I brought my kids out into a snowstorm that morning because my sister said we were welcome for Christmas brunch. But when we knocked, she didn't open the door. She just stared through the window and said nothing. That should have been the worst part. But it wasn't. Worse was discovering they'd told the whole family I canceled. Worse was seeing my mother's house, mine too, transferred behind closed doors. My name erased from trust meetings, family albums, even my daughter's school tree project. They stole more than a seat at the table. They stole the story. And if they could do that to me, how many others have they done it to, too? The cold was the kind that seeped through your clothes and made your breath feel sharp, even painful. Snowflakes clung to my lashes as I led Rhiannon and her little brother down the sloped walkway toward the front porch. Our boots crunched softly over the driveway, a rhythm I tried to keep steady. There was something comforting in its consistency, even when nothing else in my life felt that way. Rhiannon was quiet beside me, the way teenagers get when they sense a parent's nerves, but aren't sure whether to ask or stay silent. My son was too young to pick up on the tension. He clutched the foil-wrapped pie tightly, proud to carry the dessert we'd made together, Mom's cranberry pecan recipe. I told myself this time would be different. I muttered under my breath, more to the wind than to them. She said come by. She said it would be fine. The lights were already on, warm, golden, glowing through the frosted glass like something out of a magazine spread. Callista's version of hospitality, perfect from a distance, hollow if you looked too closely. I paused at the foot of the porch stairs and smoothed the front of my coat. My fingers felt like ice. Rhiannon stood a step behind me, watching. I could feel her eyes, searching my face for any cracks. I offered her a smile I hoped looked more confident than I felt. We stepped onto the porch. The wreath on the door was enormous, red velvet ribbon, hand-lettered wooden tag, "Peace lives here." I raised my hand and knocked twice, firm, calm. The sound disappeared into the silence of snow. A long pause, no footsteps, no muffled voices, just stillness. I glanced at the kids. Rhiannon shrugged. My son adjusted the pie in his arms and looked up at me. Then, finally, movement. A shadow crossed behind the frosted glass. The curtain twitched. Callista's face appeared in the side window. Just her eyes, wide and startled, as though she hadn't expected anyone despite the invitation. Her gaze locked with mine for half a second. Then she vanished again. I waited, hand hovering near the doorknob, still hopeful. Maybe she was unlocking it. Maybe she was grabbing her sweater. Instead, the door creaked open just an inch, enough to see the sliver of her expression. "Lorian," she said, tone brisk and cool. "I just don't think today is the right day for your kind of energy." I blinked. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Rhiannon leaned slightly forward. My son clutched the pie tighter. I opened my mouth, closed it, looked at her face. Unapologetic, not angry, just done. Not even a Merry Christmas, just energy. Neighbors' wind chimes jangled softly behind us. I suddenly became aware of how exposed we were. Me and my kids on a porch we had been asked to come to, now being turned away like unwelcome guests at a party already in full swing. "All right," I said, my voice even, the way you talk when your pride stands between you and a breakdown. "Come on, kids." I reached out, took the pie from my son's hands, and placed it gently on the welcome mat. We turned and stepped back into the snow. No tears, no drama, just 3 sets of footprints leading away from a door that closed behind us with the same cold decisiveness I'd grown up under. Back at the car, I helped the kids get settled in. The windshield was frosting over again. I clicked the defrost, leaned back, and stared straight ahead. Rhiannon didn't say anything. She just looked at me like she didn't quite understand, but was starting to. I cleared my throat. "Let's get pancakes." My son perked up immediately. "With syrup?" "With syrup," I smiled, starting the engine. Rhiannon gave me a sideways glance. Are we going to talk about what just happened? We will, I said softly. Just not today. It hit me as I drove away. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't surprised. Somewhere deep down, I had known. This wasn't the first time I had been pushed aside. It was just the first time it was done in front of my children. That changed everything. I took a turn toward the diner that always opened early, where the waitresses wore Santa hats and called everyone sweetheart. It wasn't where I thought we'd be this morning, but maybe it was where we needed to be. The snow kept falling. My coat was soaked at the shoulders, but I barely felt it anymore. And then my phone rang. Gareth. I stared at the screen before answering. He sounded out of breath, rushed. Why did you cancel? He asked. Everyone's waiting. My grip on the wheel tightened. The kids were quiet, looking at me. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. The snow on my coat was melting, but inside, something colder was forming. The defrost barely kept up with the frost creeping across the windshield. My coat was still damp from the snow, and my gloves sat in the passenger seat, forgotten. Rhiannon was quiet behind me, her little brother humming under his breath, still clutching the diner menu the waitress had handed him. We hadn't gone in yet. I couldn't make myself move. I stared at the phone still clutched in my hand. Gareth's words echoed in my ear. Why did you cancel? Everyone's waiting. Cancel? There was no cancellation. There was a knock, a glance through frosted glass, and a rejection. Yet somehow, in the space of a closed door and a half-truth, I had become the unreliable one. Again. I looked in the rearview mirror. My eyes met Rhiannon's. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Smart girl. She knew not to prod while I processed. I need a second, I told them gently. Just sit tight, okay? They nodded. I stepped out into the cold and walked a few paces, not far, just enough to put some space between me and their waiting silence. The wind bit at my cheeks, but I welcomed it. Better to feel that than the growing tightness in my chest. I took out my phone and scrolled back through texts, rereading the message from Callista just 3 days ago. We'd love to have you stop by on the 20th. Bring the kids. Family's all that matters. Family. Her words tasted like metal now. Back in the car, I sat quietly for a moment, watching flakes collect on the windshield. Then, reflexively, I opened Facebook. I should have known better. The first post in my feed stopped me cold. A group photo. Everyone was there. Gareth and his wife, my niece, cousins, Uncle Glenn, who never leaves Buffalo unless it's a funeral or free food. They were smiling, arms around each other. The Christmas table behind them glowing with perfect lighting and Callista's signature flair. The caption read, "Grateful for a family that always shows up." I stared at it so long I forgot to blink. Rhiannon leaned forward from the back seat. Is that from today? I nodded. Her face fell. A comment caught my eye. Wish Lorian could have made it. From a distant cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Then another. She probably flaked again. I don't know what hurt more, that they believed it, or that no one in that thread corrected them. Rhiannon let out a low exhale. They made it look like we weren't even invited. We were, I said quietly, still scrolling. We were just erased. I didn't feel anger then. Not yet. It was something colder, heavier, like being buried under snow and knowing no one was coming to dig you out. I thumbed over to my photos and found the picture I'd taken that morning of the pie. My son had insisted we document it. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. No sense keeping evidence of good intentions in a world where intention didn't matter. I turned to the kids. You still hungry? My son nodded vigorously. Pancakes? I offered. He grinned. With syrup? Extra. Rhiannon gave me a tired smile. Sounds better than fake smiles and table politics. We stepped out of the car and into the diner. It was warm inside, crowded, noisy, filled with the kind of people who didn't care how your family looked in photos. The waitress waved us to a booth. As the kids argued over toppings, I reached into my purse to grab my wallet. and my fingers brushed paper. I pulled it out. It was the printed RSVP email Gareth had sent last week. It listed all attendees. My name, my children's. Confirmed. The timestamp was clear. There it was, in black and white. No cancellation, no ambiguity. I folded it back into my purse. They could say I didn't show. They could even post about it, paint the narrative however they wanted. But I had the receipt. And maybe, just maybe, it was time they saw it too. By the time we got home, the weight of the morning had shifted from my shoulders into my stomach. Not heavy like guilt. No, this was heavier. It was the kind of weight you feel when truth collides with someone else's version of you. That moment when you realize a story has been told, and you weren't the one holding the pen. Rhiannon carried the leftover pancakes inside, her brother still rambling about chocolate chips and whipped cream, blissfully unaware. I unlocked the door and stepped into the quiet. No tree up yet, no music playing, just the soft hum of the heater and the faint reminder that we were supposed to be somewhere else. Go ahead and take a break, I told the kids. I just need a few minutes. Rhiannon hesitated like she wanted to say something, but then just nodded and disappeared down the hall. I set my purse on the kitchen counter, took a long breath, and walked straight to my laptop. I opened it without thinking. The screen lit up with my inbox, and before I could second-guess myself, I opened a blank document and typed the title, What They Forgot, and What They Chose to. The cursor blinked. I stared at the page, hands frozen. And then I was back in 2008. The day Callista called me in tears, saying she was weeks away from losing the house. I've tried everything, she said, voice cracking. I don't know what else to do. At the time, I didn't even hesitate. I had just enough saved. Money I'd been putting away for a deposit on my own place. I wired her every last cent. She cried when I handed her the confirmation, hugged me like a lifeline. Now she posts about legacy and sacrifice like she wrote the manual. I was the one who kept her from foreclosure, but I'm the one who flakes. Sometimes what they forget isn't accidental. It's strategy. I clicked over to a folder labeled Family Photos. Out of curiosity, more than anything else. Rhiannon had mentioned pulling out some old albums, and I figured, maybe there was still something in there, something real. She must have brought it into the living room without me noticing. A thick red faux leather book, fraying at the edges. I ran my hand across the cover, then opened it. Page after page of smiling faces. Birthdays, graduations, vacations. Callista's wedding, multiple angles. Gareth holding his firstborn. My mother's 60th party. I kept flipping. Nothing. I found a shot of a hospital bed, balloons in the background, Callista holding Mom's hand. Another one, Gareth beside her with a bouquet. I wasn't in any of them, not even in the background. The weeks I stayed in that house, caring for our mother, while everyone else rotated in and out, pretending they didn't hear her cry in the night, there wasn't a single photo. No evidence. Not of the midnight sponge baths, the medication charts, the quiet conversations that only the dying are brave enough to have. It was like I'd never been there. Rhiannon walked in, holding a mug of tea. She saw me flipping through the book and paused. "You're not in those, are you?" she asked softly. "No," I said too quickly. She walked over and sat beside me. "But you were." I smiled tightly. "Yeah, I was." She handed me the tea. "They probably didn't forget, Mom. They just didn't want to remember." I sipped the tea in silence, letting her words settle. Kids notice more than we think. After she left the room, I pulled out the RSVP confirmation again. The one Gareth sent with my name, my kids' names, clearly marked as confirmed. I set it next to the album on the table. One piece of paper that proved I was invited. Another collection of pages that proved I was never really there. If they've already erased me, I might as well speak like someone who can't be erased again. I opened my laptop again and added a new line. You can erase me from a photo, but not from the truth. Just as I saved the file, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Check Facebook, you're tagged in something. I clicked the link, and my heart dropped. I clicked the notification with a knot in my throat. My phone screen lit up with a familiar face, my mother's, framed in white holly and gold ribbon. The tag brought me to Callista's Facebook post. It was a photo of the brunch table, carefully staged. At the center sat Mom's portrait and the painting I had given the family 6 Christmases ago, the one I spent weeks finishing after her diagnosis. I recognized every brushstroke. The caption read, "Callista always brings the heart to the table." Heart, my gift, her credit. Not once did the post mention me, my name, my children, gone. Just like we never stood in the snow, never knocked, never handed over that pie that still sat untouched on her porch. The comments made it worse. So beautiful. Callista's style is unmatched. This is what family looks like. Then came the one that hit just right, or just wrong. She really honors her mom so well. Some people just disappear when things get hard. I closed the app without liking, commenting, reacting. Silence can be louder than words when it's all you've got. There's a quote I used to teach my daughter when she started learning about integrity. You can steal credit, but you can't inherit soul. At that moment, it was all I could hear. Her soul wasn't in that post. Mine was. I moved to my laptop and checked YouTube, half out of habit, half out of dread. Callista's newest video had gone live 30 minutes ago. It was titled, "How I Hosted a Holiday of Healing." I knew that voiceover before it even started. Soft piano chords in the background, candlelight glimmering through wine glasses, clips of her slicing ham and laughing with cousins. She looked like a woman holding her family together through grief and love. Then, over slow-motion shots of children opening presents. Even when some people don't show up, we show up for each other. I paused the video, not because I was surprised, but because of how good she'd gotten at this. It wasn't just exclusion, it was narrative. She wasn't just erasing me, she was painting herself as the one left behind, the one carrying the emotional weight, the noble sister, the dutiful daughter, the victim of my imagined absence. I sat there staring at the freeze frame of her smile, arms around people who knew better and chose silence anyway. I could feel the heat in my chest rising. Not rage, clarity. I didn't need to argue anymore. I clicked over to my email and started attaching screenshots. Facebook, RSVP confirmation, even a snapshot of the painting in her post. I added timestamps. I wrote captions under each. Then, I opened a blank email and addressed it to one person. Gareth. Subject line. Let's talk before I stop being quiet. I didn't add more than that. I didn't ask for anything. Not an explanation, not an apology, just a choice. I hit send. Then I sat back and waited. The blue checkmark appeared instantly. Gareth had read it. No typing bubble, no reply. Minutes passed, still nothing. My daughter stepped into the room, holding her phone. The next morning didn't start with thunder. No fights, no calls. Just a quiet sort of resignation hanging in the air like morning frost that wouldn't melt. Silence had dressed itself in manners, and I had come armed with memory. Gareth's reply landed in my inbox at 6:12 a.m., a perfectly timed display of damage control. The subject line read, Let's talk. The body of the email was short, too short. Hey Lorian, let's not escalate this. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Emotions run high around the holidays. Let's find a way forward that doesn't create more tension for everyone. Best, Gareth. No acknowledgement, no responsibility, no mention of Callista's lie. Just a polite pat on the head, the kind you give to someone you want to silence gently. A calm cover-up disguised as diplomacy. I whispered the words as I read them again. Let's not escalate this. That's what they always say when they're the ones who lit the fire. I closed the laptop with more force than necessary and stood up. My living room was still dim, blinds only half opened. I poured myself a mug of coffee, black and hot, the way I liked it when I needed to think clearly. It was time to cut the strings. That morning, while my kids slept in, Tired from pancakes and too many emotions, I opened every account tied to the family's financial footprint. The maintenance fund, which I had quietly contributed to every month for nearly 5 years, was the first to go. I canceled the auto payment with 2 clicks. Next was the shared utility account for the old family home, a relic from when I was still managing the property bills during Mom's final months. I sent a formal termination notice with a timestamp. No explanation, just clarity. They erased me from the memory, I muttered to myself. Let me erase myself from the mortgage. By mid-morning, I had closed 4 more small accounts. Nothing earth-shattering, but all reminders that I had been holding the weight while they framed me as the ghost. I stood in the doorway of the hallway, watching the quiet apartment, and knew I needed to finish it. Not with fire, but with finality. I sat at the kitchen table and began writing holiday letters. Not the cheerful kind with glitter and family updates. Just 4 sentences, typed, signed, folded neatly into envelopes. This is the last time you'll receive anything under my name. Consider this my parting gift. The photograph enclosed is not for show, it's for truth. Each envelope held a printed photo of me and the kids beside our small real Christmas tree. The lights were crooked, the ornaments were mismatched, but the smiles were ours, unedited. On the back of each photo, I wrote, "We were here too." I sealed the envelopes, stacked them on the entry table, and slid on my coat. I planned to drop them off by hand, not for drama, but because I didn't want them pretending they'd never received them. As I zipped up my jacket, my phone vibrated. A new message notification. You've been added to a messenger group, family trust meeting. My heart jumped. For a second, I almost let hope creep in, but the group was gone before I could tap it. Another ping followed. You were removed from the group, just like that. No explanation, not even the decency of a fake excuse. They had added me so they could screenshot that I had been included and removed me before I could speak. A preemptive defense. A curated record. It wasn't just what they said. It was what they made sure I'd never see. By late afternoon, the sky had dulled into that heavy gray that presses against your windows, like it's leaning in to listen. I stood in the kitchen, slicing apples for a crumble I wasn't sure I'd finish. The silence in the apartment had taken on a new weight, not from absence, but from clarity. Rhiannon hovered in the doorway, holding her phone tight in both hands. She didn't speak right away, and when she did, her voice was cautious. "Mom, can I show you something?" I turned off the stove, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and nodded. She walked over slowly, unlocked her screen, and tapped into her recordings. This happened at Aunt Callista's. I didn't mean to catch it. It was just running in my bag. The audio started mid-conversation, voices I recognized instantly. Callista's clipped tone came through first. "Just don't bring her up again. It triggers things, okay?" Another voice, a cousin's maybe, murmured a vague agreement. Then Callista again, quieter. "Let's keep it light. If she thinks she's welcome, she'll show up." The recording ended there. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. "They coached silence," I said calmly. Rhiannon's face was pale. "I didn't know it was that deliberate." I hugged her close. "You're brave for not pretending this is okay." She leaned into me, and for the first time in days, I let someone hold some of the weight. After she returned to her room, I sat at my desk and opened my email, ready to clear out the trash of the day. That's when I saw it. An accidental forward from my second cousin, Bethany. She had meant to send a brochure draft to the family printer, but must have CC'd me from an old thread. Curious, I opened the file. It was for the upcoming family anniversary celebration. Slick design, themed colors, their usual flair for the performative. A section titled, "Our Pillars, Honoring the Heart of the Family." Callista was there, of course. Gareth and his wife. Even 2 of the cousins who moved to Arizona and haven't visited in 6 years. But not me. Not even a footnote, not even a photo. And yet, I was the one who sat by Mom's bed when she could no longer feed herself. I was the one who rearranged my schedule to cover Gareth's days when he had hospital fatigue. I was the one who made sure the house didn't fall apart after the funeral. They didn't just ignore me, they redacted me. I closed the laptop with a click sharp enough to startle myself. Then I reopened it and pulled up a folder I had started weeks ago but hadn't touched since. When truth matters more than peace. I added the recording from Rhiannon, screenshots of the RSVP, a printout of the family fund transaction history, 5 years of deposits, all from my account. Each item was labeled, dated, filed. Not for revenge, but for memory. Because forgiveness without accountability is amnesia in disguise, and I refused to forget who I had been, just because it made their version more comfortable. As I uploaded the files to my private cloud, another notification blinked across the screen. A shared folder. Title: Holiday Legacy Presentation, Final. I clicked it. Inside, slides, charts, pictures. One caught my eye, a photo of the painting I gave Mom before her final Christmas. The one I'd spent weeks creating, the one I'd watched Callista post online, pretending she found it in a thrift store find. In the caption, she wrote, "A timeless piece from an unknown artist, perfectly capturing the holiday spirit. Unknown, not forgotten, not accidental. They kept my art, my labor, my presence, but not my name." The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in the room. Outside, the wind scraped against the windows like it had something urgent to say. I hadn't moved much since the folder notification appeared hours ago, just enough to make coffee and watch it go cold. The shared document was still open. A slideshow labeled Holiday Legacy Presentation, Final. No password, no restriction. Just open enough for me to glimpse what they were saying, or omitting. They had used the painting again, my painting, but this time it was credited to a family contribution, courtesy of the Callista Foundation. Courtesy of. As if I had dropped it off like a donation and walked away without a name, a story, or a mother I once sat beside night after night while everyone else slept. I was still staring at the slide when my inbox pinged. A new message. From a generic Gmail address. Subject: Draft for print only. The attachment: Family Trust Meeting, Draft Agenda. Forwarded by mistake. The original sender? Bethany's assistant. The agenda was cleanly formatted, all pastel headers and polite phrasing. Discussion items included legacy assignments, estate visuals, property transition prep. Beneath that, subheadings: Callista, Gareth, their spouses. I read every line, 3 times. My name wasn't there, not in any context, not as an attendee, not as a co-heir, not even as a topic. I wasn't just being left out of the table, I was being written out of the terms. They weren't satisfied with emotionally erasing me. Now they were doing it legally. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, my fingers pressing into the sides of the keyboard. Then, as if summoned by the weight in my chest, my phone lit up again. A message from Uncle Dale. Attached: a photo of the front page from the Rochester Daily Chronicle. Title: 3 Generations of Giving, the Callista Foundation. Callista stood in the center of the photo, holding a plaque with our mother's name engraved on it. To her right, her daughter. To her left, Gareth. The article opened with, "Honoring the family women who built a legacy of community." The piece never once mentioned me. I read the first 2 paragraphs aloud, each word sharp like cracked glass in my mouth. Family matriarch Edith's commitment to charity was passed on through her daughter Callista and granddaughter Elise, who now lead efforts to expand the Callista Foundation's presence throughout the Northeast. I wasn't even a footnote in my own mother's obituary by proxy. She rebranded our mother as a stepping stone, I whispered, the words tasting like betrayal. Not for truth, not for memory, for leverage, for applause. I sat back, staring at the 2 open windows on my screen. The family slideshow and the citywide article. The contrast was surgical. Two versions of history being rewritten in real time. If I'm not in the frame, I'm not in the fight. That was the realization that landed hardest. Because this wasn't silence anymore. This was strategy. I whispered to myself, if they want to build a dynasty, they better be ready for a dynasty's downfall. That's when I noticed the envelope. Plain, no return address. Sitting at the base of the front door, like someone had slipped it through during the last hour, while I was lost in my thoughts. I opened it slowly. Inside was a small black flash drive. And a handwritten note. You should hear what they said when they thought you weren't listening. The flash drive slid easily into the port, almost too quiet for what I expected it to hold. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms, and waited for the contents to load. It wasn't just files. It was a podcast episode. One of those niche ones, the kind shared quietly among communities. The title alone caught me. Family Ghosts, the ones who are erased. The host's voice was calm, soft, almost clinical. We received an anonymous story this week. The names have been changed, but if you've lived it, you'll recognize every detail. And then I heard my own voice. My words. The audio wasn't stolen. It was mine. Something I'd recorded in a haze of grief and insomnia months ago, but never submitted. I don't know who leaked it. Maybe Rhiannon. Maybe someone who believed I needed help telling the truth. I didn't walk away from my family, I heard myself say. I was just never allowed to stay in it fully. The episode detailed the patterns. How I was always invited last. How my name slowly disappeared from newsletters, slideshows, speeches. How I became a ghost at events I helped organize. As the recording played, I watched the comments flood in under the episode. This happened to me too. My mother erased me with the kindest words. They called me difficult. I was just present. Within an hour, the episode was trending. I refreshed again. Callista's name wasn't mentioned, but every listener who knew her, they knew. And the timing didn't help her case. By mid-afternoon, she posted a video response. The title made me roll my eyes. Let's be honest. Why families fall apart. There she was, camera perfectly framed, lighting soft as a makeup tutorial. She looked tired, but too clean, too composed. The tears were cued on command. I never meant to exclude anyone, she began, voice breaking slightly. I did what I thought was best for the peace of the family. I sat motionless as she spun the story. How roles had shifted, how people had misunderstood, how some people just chose distance. But the comments didn't let her off. She's not sorry, she's caught. Did anyone ask why Lorian's name is missing from all those events? Nice lighting for an apology video. Someone posted screenshots of my painting, the one credited to the foundation. The tide had turned, and I didn't have to say a single word. I closed the video, breathing deeply. The house was still. Rhiannon was in her room, probably reading or writing, maybe watching it all unfold online herself. My son napped on the couch, toy truck half gripped in one hand. I didn't post anything. I didn't share the podcast or respond to the comments. When truth moves on its own, you don't have to drag it. Instead, I opened the folder on my computer labeled Not Forgotten and added a few new screenshots. A minute later, my phone rang. Gareth. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Lorian? He said. No pleasantries. Just my name, like he hadn't read and ignored me for days. We need to talk, in person. There was a long pause. I could hear voices behind him. His kids, maybe. I didn't ask where or when. I just said, so do I. The office building was modern, glass and silence. It reflected more than it protected. I stood at the door for a moment longer than I needed to, watching my reflection, one I barely recognize these days. A woman who had stopped expecting repair and started preparing receipts. Gareth greeted me in the lobby, dressed in what he always wore when he wanted to signal neutrality. Gray slacks, navy sweater, that same strained half-smile he reserved for funerals and tense family barbecues. Thanks for coming, he said, voice tight. You said you wanted to talk, I replied. I'm listening. He motioned to the private conference room, a glass box at the end of the hallway. Inside, a pitcher of water sat untouched, 2 glasses, and a tray of cookies someone probably thought added warmth. More private this way, he said as he closed the door behind us. Nothing private ever felt more exposed, I murmured. I opened my bag, laid the printed screenshots on the table, the email confirmation, the photo from the paper, the folder labeled Not Forgotten. I didn't speak first. He cleared his throat. I didn't know it had gone that far. I raised my eyes to meet his. You didn't know, or you didn't ask? He hesitated. I just wanted to keep the peace, Lorian. You kept the peace by letting them erase me in front of my daughter. I pushed one paper forward, the transcription of what Rhiannon told me. Mom told her, "We don't bring up your mother's name. It just causes trouble." That came from a child, my child. Gareth flinched. I thought silence would protect you. No, it just made the cut deeper, quieter, cleaner. I leaned forward. You saw what was happening and decided it was easier to look away. I wasn't trying to hurt you. You didn't have to try. You just had to do nothing. We sat in silence, the kind that doesn't offer space. It tightens it. I saw in his eyes he wanted to shift blame to Callista, to tradition, to some vague idea of how families work. Is this about the group chat? He asked, voice faltering. I didn't move. She said you'd be more comfortable not being in it. Said it was for logistics. She didn't mean it maliciously. I stared at him. Comfortable. That's the word you all use when you mean invisible. He rubbed his jaw. It wasn't about erasing you. But it did erase me, Gareth. He had no answer. No defense. I knew this wasn't new information to him, just inconvenient now that it was public. You didn't choose silence, I said. You chose convenience, every single time. I slid the USB drive across the table. This has the audio, the timeline, the parts you told yourself you didn't see. Lorian, I stood up. Don't. There's nothing left to explain. Can't we just… No. My voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. You all always want a smooth landing. I'm done cushioning it. I didn't wait for him to walk me out. I didn't even glance back. Forgiveness isn't owed to someone who never asked for truth. Some things don't get wrapped up. They get walked away from. Closure isn't a team sport. That night, back home, I set the USB in a drawer and turned off my phone. I didn't want more messages. I didn't want more carefully worded apologies that came without acknowledgement. Then my laptop pinged with a message request. From a name I hadn't seen in years. Mrs. Adele, our old neighbor from when Mom was still alive. I heard what they've been doing, she wrote. I have something for you. Something your mother wanted you to have. Christmas Eve morning was quiet in a way that felt ceremonial. There was no wrapping paper, no music, no cinnamon in the air. Just a stillness I didn't try to fill. I told Rhiannon I'd be out for a little while. She just nodded, no questions. She understood more than she ever should have had to. Mrs. Adele lived 3 blocks over, in the same cottage-style house with wind chimes that had tangled every year since I was 12. She opened the door before I knocked, as if she'd been standing behind it, waiting. I was wondering when you'd come, she said, her voice soft but steady. She didn't invite me to sit. Instead, she handed me a sealed envelope and a small wooden box. The envelope was yellowed at the edges. On the front, in my mother's handwriting, for Lorian. Only if it gets that bad. It had gotten that bad. Inside the box, there were photographs. Some I'd never seen. Me brushing Mom's hair, reading to her on the porch, holding her hand as she lay in bed with oxygen tubes looped around her cheeks. Beside them, folded letters written in her slanted cursive, pages of memories and thanks. And one folded document, a deed. My name. Her name. Joint ownership. Mrs. Adele reached out and lightly touched my wrist. Your mother didn't trust words in that house. She trusted paper. She knew who showed up. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something unknotted in my chest. Back at home, Rhiannon was hunched over her laptop. She looked up when I entered. Can I show you something? She had built a digital family tree for school. But on the chart, her name branched only from Callista's line. I wasn't even there. The program had auto-filled the connection based on public records, shared names, and assumptions. They erased my name in private, I said, but I'll reprint it in public. That night, I scanned the deed, the photos, the letters. Then I opened a blank email and addressed it to the family's estate attorney. The subject: Request to halt unauthorized property transfer. I wrote, as co-owner and co-caretaker of Edith's memory, I formally object to any transition or reassignment of her property until my legal role is acknowledged and my history reinstated. I attached everything, and I pressed send. I didn't expect a reply before the holidays, but it came quicker than I thought. At 6:04 p.m., I received a short email. We were unaware of your legal claim. Please join the January session to discuss adjustment of rights. Beneath it, I noticed something small but seismic. For the first time in years, my name was included in the CC line, alongside Callista's, Gareth's, the lawyer, the estate manager. They didn't write me in because they missed me. They wrote me in because they had no choice. I sat in silence for a long time, rereading that line. I wasn't just seen, I was recorded. Christmas morning arrived without a knock at the door, and for once I didn't glance toward it expecting one. The apartment was quiet in that rare golden way, before the world woke up and demanded something from you. The tree glowed softly in the corner. Its ornaments were uneven, the lights bunched at the bottom where my son had decorated with full commitment and no concern for symmetry. I hadn't corrected it. It felt real. Rhiannon shuffled into the kitchen first, hair tied up, wearing one of my old sweatshirts. Want me to get the griddle hot? She asked. I smiled. Already warmed. Pancake duty is yours. We didn't rush. There were no expectations. Just music on low, the smell of maple syrup warming, and the sound of my son humming as he opened the game cabinet. For the first time, I thought, flipping a pancake onto a plate, I'm not waiting for someone else to let me in. I'm building the table myself. Rhiannon set 2 plates on the table and paused. Thanks, she said quietly, for not making today about what we lost. I turned, surprised by her tone. I'm trying to make it about what we still have. She gave a small smile and went to wake her brother. After brunch, while the kids played a lopsided game of Monopoly that would end in one of them cheating for sure, I sat at my desk and opened my journal. It had been months since I'd written in it. I flipped past pages full of confusion, betrayal, silence, and then I found a blank one. I will not forget, I wrote, but I will not carry their absence like it belongs to me. They can keep the photos. I have the moments. Peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means being okay, even if they never say sorry. Later that afternoon, I checked the mail and found an envelope from the real estate office. Inside was the formal confirmation. The deed was officially amended. My mother's house, our house, was now equally and legally in my name. No more revisions, no more denials. I walked into the living room and showed the paper to Rhiannon. She grinned. You gonna post it? I nodded, took a picture, and uploaded it with the caption, for my children, and their mother's name. That evening, we drove to the old house. The air was cold but dry, the kind of cold that stayed quiet and didn't bite. In the back seat, my son sang something off-key while Rhiannon held a small wooden sign we'd picked up earlier that week. Gold script, carved cleanly. Edith's Haven. We parked. I unlocked the gate with the key that now held weight. Rhiannon walked to the front post and screwed the plate into place. Neither of us said much. We didn't just reclaim a house. We reclaimed memory. That night, back at home, I made tea and checked my email. Nothing new. just promotional junk and a newsletter I kept forgetting to unsubscribe from. Then I saw it. An envelope tucked under the apartment door. No stamp, no return address, just my name on the front, written in a hand I hadn't seen in years. Inside was a folded sheet of lined paper. "I should have said this years ago," the front read, in my father's handwriting. The letter was short, just one sentence, really. "You were the only one who stayed when it mattered. I saw it. I said nothing. I'm sorry." There was no signature, but I knew the handwriting, the slight backward lean of his R's, the way he always dotted his I's with small, sharp stabs. My father had finally written something worth reading. I folded the letter, not because I needed to save it, but because it belonged with the documents now, with the deed, with the letters, with the proof. Too late to fix the past, just in time to set me free. January 2nd arrived quietly, like the rest of the world had agreed to start fresh, while I stayed behind to finish what they'd left undone. The family archive event was scheduled for noon at the community center. I wore black slacks, a soft gray blouse, and no makeup. I didn't need to decorate myself for their comfort anymore. The room was already half full when I arrived. There were folding chairs in rows, a makeshift podium, and a slideshow playing on a loop. Families of Rochester, legacy keepers. Callista stood near the front, her hair smoothed into place, her expression mild. She was scheduled to speak third. Gareth nodded politely when he saw me. No words, no attempt. I didn't sign in. I didn't need the formality. When the host invited the next speaker, Callista stepped up with a practiced smile. "Thank you for joining us today," she began, "to celebrate those who've carried the past into the future with grace." She didn't see me walking forward. She didn't see me until I placed the manila folder on the podium beside her. I leaned into the mic. "I'd like to offer an addition to the record." A few murmurs rose from the back. Callista stepped aside, not out of permission, but out of confusion. I opened the folder, pulled out the deed, the photo of Mom and me in the final weeks, and one letter. "My name is Lorian. I was not included in the legacy packet. I was not listed in the family slideshow. I was not mentioned in the newspaper. But I was there." I unfolded the letter and began reading. "The one who fed me soup at night, who stayed when the rest moved on. That's my legacy. Edith, written by hand, dated 4 weeks before she passed." Silence. Then applause. Not loud, not wild, but steady. Solid. Callista didn't move. Her face had changed. She wasn't angry. She wasn't embarrassed. She was nothing. She had lost the script. And that's when I understood. She hadn't just lost control of the story. She had never understood what the story was. After the event, I walked out with my kids. No crowd followed, no camera flashes, just Rhiannon slipping her arm through mine and my son grabbing my hand. When we returned to the house, the one I now legally owned, the one that no slideshow could erase, I walked to the side of the yard and pulled out the plaque we had made together. "Ready?" I asked. Rhiannon nodded. She drilled the plate into place herself, hands steady. Edith's haven gleamed in brass against the wood. We didn't just reclaim a house. We reclaimed memory. I didn't post about it. I didn't tag anyone. But I printed a copy of the plaque photo and tucked it inside the file labeled "For Them." Maybe someday they'd want to know. As I settled back into the living room, Rhiannon curled beside me. "Mom," she whispered, "do you want to tell the real story next?" I didn't hesitate. "Only if they're finally ready to hear it."